Krishna.
Oh, Satya, can you see me? Because I can't, I'm just seeing a black screen.
Yeah, I can't see your video.
Can I try again?
Yeah,
Can you
sure.
just exit this?
Sure. Hare Krishna Subala. We're just waiting for Krsnarupa to join. It's nice to have you online with us. How have you been keeping? Hare Krishna.
Is it okay now?
Yep, I can see you. It's a little digital, but it's okay. I can hear. Hare Krishna Prema.
Okay.
Cool. Uh, are you able to hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I guess we'll just say hello to everyone. So Hare Krishna everyone, and thank you for joining us this Saturday morning for our Bhakti Book Club session. Um, this December we're giving away quite a few gifts. So if you share your reflections of this book and you tag a friend when the video is uploaded, then you can claim your book gift from BYS. So just keep your eyes and ears peeled, and more details will follow in our programs to come. So today we have Krsnarupa with us, and many of you may know her already. And she's going to be reading Beyond Birth and Death with us by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta. Yeah. And if you would like a copy of a book, our catalog is going to be available soon. But you can drop us a message and we can arrange for a delivery for you. Okay, so with that, Krsnarupa, I got my copy so I can follow.
So we're going to read from chapter 1, starting right at the beginning. Maybe I should quickly just say about this book. It's written by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And this is an introductory book into Vedic knowledge, but it's very wholesome and it's enriched with verses and references to Vedic literature like the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's a great place to start, but also extremely enriching. Chapter 1, We Are Not These Bodies. O descendant of Bharat, he who dwells in the body is eternal and can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any creature. Bhagavad Gita 2.30. The very first step in self-realization is realizing one's identity as separate from the body. I am not this body, but am spirit soul, is an essential realization for anyone who wants to transcend death and enter into the spiritual world beyond. It is not simply a matter of saying I'm not this body, but of actually realizing it. This is not as simple as it may seem at first. Although we are not these bodies, but are pure consciousness, somehow or other we have become encased within the bodily dress. If we actually want the happiness and independence that transcend death, we have to establish ourselves and remain in our constitutional position as pure consciousness. Living in the bodily conception, our idea of happiness is like that of a man in delirium. Some philosophers claim that this delirious condition of bodily identification should be cured by abstaining from all action. Because these material activities have been a source of distress for us, they claim that we should actually stop these activities. Their culmination of perfection is in a kind of Buddhistic nirvana, in which no activities are performed. Buddha maintained that due to a combination of material elements, this body has come into existence. and that somehow or other, if these material elements are separated or dismantled, the cause of suffering is removed. If the tax collectors give us too much difficulty because we happen to possess a large house, one simple solution is to destroy the house. However, Bhagavad Gita indicates that this material body is not all in all. Beyond this combination of material elements, there is spirit, and the symptom of that spirit is consciousness. Consciousness cannot be denied. A body without consciousness is a dead body. As soon as consciousness is removed from the body, the mouth will not speak, the eye will not see, nor the ears hear. A child can understand that. It is fact that consciousness is absolutely necessary for the animation of the body. What is this consciousness? Just as heat or smoke are symptoms of fire, so consciousness is the symptom of the soul. The energy of the soul or self is produced in the shape of consciousness. Indeed, consciousness proves that the soul is present. This is not only the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, but the conclusion of all Vedic literature. The impersonalist followers of Shankaracharya, as well as the Vaishnavas following in the disciplic succession from Lord Sri Krishna, acknowledge the factual existence of the soul, but the Buddhist philosophers do not. The Buddhists contend that at a certain stage, the combination of matter produces consciousness. But this argument is refuted by the fact that although we may have all the constituents of matter at our disposal, we cannot produce consciousness from them. So this is an interesting point, and in some lectures, Srila Prabhupada describes this as a post-dated check. Like, there have been many examples where scientists have claimed that we will be able to produce life, and they say it'll happen sometime in the future, but there's never been any proof that we can do it. So, as we're saying here, we may have all the ingredients to produce life, but we haven't yet been able to do it. And if we claim that we can sometime in the future, it's just not, there's no evidence that we can. So we have to consider the fact that possibly there's something that we're missing. There's some ingredient, essential ingredient that we don't have. And that's the reason why we can't seem to replicate life. We can't seem to produce it. All the material elements may be present in a dead man, but we cannot revive that man to consciousness. This body is not like a machine. When a part of a machine breaks down, it can be replaced and the machine will work again. But when the body breaks down and consciousness leaves the body, there is no possibility of replacing the broken part and rejuvenating the consciousness. The soul is different from the body, and as long as the soul is there, the body is animate. But there is no possibility of making the body animate in the absence of the soul. Because we cannot perceive the soul by our gross senses, we deny it. Actually, there are so many things that are there which we cannot see. We cannot see air, radio waves, or sound, nor can we perceive minute bacteria with our blunt senses. But this does not mean that they're not there. By the aid of the microscope and other instruments, many things can be perceived which had been previously denied by the imperfect senses. Just because the soul, which is atomic in size, has not been perceived by the senses or instruments, we should not conclude that it is not there. It can, however, be perceived by its symptoms and effects. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna points out that all of our miseries are due to false identification with the body. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of heat and cold, happiness and distress, and their disappearance and due are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharat, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Bhagavad Gita 2.14. I think this particular verse is extremely powerful because it's very clear that we go through experiences in life that are so challenging that this wisdom doesn't always seem to be able to reach us. Like, this wisdom on the one hand seems very clear, and the instruction that the Lord is giving is clear. But we find ourselves in situations where we can't apply this knowledge. We're not really ready to, or we don't have all the tools to directly apply it to what we might think is a situation too great to overcome at that time. And so elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord speaks about being equipoised in happiness and distress. And I was thinking that although we may not always be able to implement that, we may not always be in a position to execute that, at the time that we're facing difficulty. It's a real source of solace to stay in touch with higher knowledge, because constantly hearing this and by constantly receiving and being open to this higher knowledge, we do gain the strength. And sometimes we don't always know how that works, and we may not immediately see the effects. But
Shucks. It's a bit frozen. We'll just wait a few seconds for Krsnarupa's connection. Your connection cut a little there, Krsnarupa.
okay.
Yeah, your screen froze for a few seconds. But it seems alright now.
Okay. Anything you want to add, Susan?
Yeah, I like that point that you're making, that sometimes, we come across something in the literature and we feel that we may not be able to apply it in our lives. But um, uh, Kadamakanana Swami, a Bhakti Yoga practitioner, he often mentions that we come across these verses and we collect them and we keep them with us, so they become a source of strength and inspiration in our lives. So even if we may not yet be able to actually live it out, the fact that we have access to them, it gives us the opportunity to receive grace, because we're making that connection. And in that way, eventually we'll be able to actually live it out as well. So it's also just, it allows us that humility to acknowledge where we actually are, and
Mm.
and the ideal, in a sense, an ideal position of being balanced in our consciousness and having a clear vision of life and how to approach it in times of difficulty is there. And in that way, we're able to connect with it through grace, that we can actually work towards that in our lives. So yeah, I like that point that you were making.
Mm. And I feel like from personal experience, like even just being close to these instructions, like even if we really can't do anything with them at the time, like knowing this comes from the higher source, this comes from the Lord, and like there's protection just in this instruction, and being close to it, even if I can't act on it right now or can't really see,
Yeah.
how to the strength of myself.
I think it's about being ready as well. Like this particular verse that you read, it's about being equiposed in any circumstance. So the example given is like the weather, for instance, heat and cold. But it's also just in challenging situations in our life. We have that experience of, like, this whole lockdown situation was challenging, right? And it's kind of like we're all stuck in a particular situation. We don't have that mobility sometimes, we don't have it. And if we gain a spiritual perspective, then we have a more holistic outlook on life, and it gives us that balance, that focus, that just the immediate temporary things are not are influencing us, but there is a bigger picture at the same time. So the literature does actually provide us with that bigger vision of life.
Mm-hmm. I have
Uh,
a question from
yeah.
Prem Harikirtan Das. He says, how to get more taste towards the holy name, so towards chanting the names of God. I am not one to speak on this, but from my small amount of experience, it really helps me to chant along with others. So to chant in association is how you might say it. And if you can't be physically with others, and just to have recordings, Like, I have some recordings saved of Srila Prabhupada's chanting the holy names of God, and it helps me so much just to chant along with that and to just hear it as I'm chanting. I don't know if Satya has any tips.
How to get more taste? I ask myself that. I think it's something that we're all trying to strive towards, to be honest. But one thing my own spiritual master often says is that actually reading, actually, if you're going to start your meditation, sometimes it's useful to actually pick up the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, and to just actually read a verse or something like that. So in that way, your consciousness becomes prepared for actually meditating on the Lord, because it's actually a relationship. The holy name is actually a relationship that you're developing. So reading for me is something that actually helps me out. So yeah, I guess we can carry on with the text. Tirumala is here.
In the summertime, we may feel pleasure from contact with water, but in the winter, we may shun that very water because it is too cold. In either case, the water is the same, though we perceive it as pleasant or painful due to its contact with the body. All feelings of distress and happiness are due to the body. Under certain conditions, the body and mind feel happiness and distress. One short reflection on this is, I was thinking about a short phrase called heart posture. Like, sometimes we may find ourselves in a difficult situation, but if our heart posture, like the way we're situated internally, is that we're open to what the Lord is trying to teach us, or we're confident in his protection of us at all times, then because of being in that heart posture, we will not find our condition to be as distressing as we might have found it if we didn't have that outlook. So just the way that we're situated amidst whatever we're facing can make a difference.
Dear Lord Krishna is asking, which book are we reading from? Beyond Birth and Death. If you have a copy of it, she's reading from. She just ended on page 5. She's going to go on page 6. But I like that point, Krsnarupa, of heart posture. It's like where your mind and your heart is situated. It's like having that sense of fixed determination, and then whatever comes, you can just you can withstand it.
Actually, we're hankering after happiness, for the soul's constitutional position is that of happiness. The soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Being, who is Satchidananda Vigraha, the embodiment of knowledge, bliss, and eternity. Indeed, the very name Krishna, which is non-sectarian, means the greatest pleasure. Krish means greatest, and Na means pleasure. Krishna is the epitome of pleasure, and being part and parcel of him, we hanker for pleasure. A drop of ocean water has all the properties of the ocean itself, and we, although minute particles of the Supreme Whole, have the same energetic properties as the Supreme. The atomic soul, although so small, is moving the entire body to act in so many wonderful ways. In the world, we see so many cities, highways, bridges, great buildings, monuments, and great civilizations. But who has done all this? It is all done by the minute spirit spark within the body. If such wonderful things can be performed by the minute spirit spark, we cannot begin to imagine what can be accomplished by the Supreme Spirit. The natural hankering of the minute spirit spark is for the qualities of the whole, knowledge, bliss, and eternity. But these hankerings are being frustrated due to the material body. The information on how to attain the soul's desire is given in Bhagavad Gita. At present, we are trying to attain eternity, bliss, and knowledge by means of an imperfect instrument. Actually, our progress toward these goals is being blocked by the material body. Therefore, we have to come to the realization of our existence beyond the body. Theoretical knowledge that we are not these bodies will not do. We have to keep ourselves always separate as masters of the body, not as servants. If we know how to drive a car well, it will give us good service, but if we do not know how, we will be in danger. The body is composed of senses, and the senses are always hungry after their objects. The eyes see a beautiful person and tell us, "Oh, there is a beautiful girl, a beautiful boy, let's go see." The ears are telling us, "Oh, there is very nice music, let us go hear." The tongue is saying, "Oh, there is a very nice restaurant with palatable dishes, let us go." In this way, the senses are dragging us from one place to another, and because of this, we are perplexed. As a boat on the water is swept away by a strong wind, even one of the senses on which our mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Bhagavad Gita 2.67. It is imperative that we learn how to control the senses. The name Goswami is given to someone who has learned how to master the senses. Go means senses, and Swami means controller. So one who can control the senses is to be considered a Goswami. Krishna indicates that one who identifies with the illusory material body cannot establish himself in his proper identity as spirit soul. Bodily pleasure is flickering and intoxicating, and we cannot actually enjoy it because of its momentary nature. I came across a quote the other day. I don't remember it exactly, but it was something to the effect of that material enjoyment won't do, or it's insufficient because it's falls short of eternity. So what we're actually looking for is enjoyment or bliss that lasts eternally long. And material enjoyment would have been a good candidate if it lasted eternally, but it doesn't. So that was actual pleasure is of the soul, not the body. We have to mold our lives in such a way that we will not be diverted by bodily pleasure. And I like the choice of word here, diverted. It gives us the understanding that we are supposed to be on a certain track. We're supposed to have a certain path and a certain goal that's clear to us. And if we're being diverted, then we're being taken off the road or being steered off track. If somehow we are diverted, it is not possible for us to establish our consciousness and its true identity beyond the body. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. The Vedas deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Rise above these modes, O Arjuna. Be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Bhagavad Gita 2.44 to 45. The word Veda means book of knowledge. There are many books of knowledge, which vary according to the country, population, environment, etc. In India, the books of knowledge are referred to as the Vedas. In the West, they are called the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Mohammedans accept the Quran. What is the purpose for all these books of knowledge? They are to train us to understand our position as pure soul. Their purpose is to restrict bodily activities by certain rules and regulations, and these rules and regulations are known as codes of morality. The Bible, for instance, has 10 commandments intended to regulate our lives. The body must be controlled in order for us to reach the highest perfection. And without regulative principles, it is not possible to perfect our lives. The regulative principles may differ from country to country or from scripture to scripture, but that doesn't matter, for they are made according to the time and circumstances and the mentality of the people. But the principle of regulated control is the same. Similarly, the government sets down certain regulations to be obeyed by its citizens. There is no possibility of making advancement in government or civilization without some regulations. In the previous verse, Sri Krishna tells Arjuna that the regulative principles of the Vedas are meant to control the three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Trigunya Vishaya Vedaha. However, Krishna is advising Arjuna to establish himself in his pure constitutional position as spirit soul, beyond the dualities of material nature. So I like this point here in his pure constitutional position of as spirit soul. When we encounter the instruction that we're not this body, it may seem dry to us or overwhelming at first, because then we're trying to figure out what we actually are. And once we're given the information that we're pure spirit soul, that we actually are composed of the same qualities that the Lord is, then we're reassured and we can look forward to being situated in that actual position. As we have already pointed out, these dualities, such as heat and cold, pleasure and pain, arise due to the contact of the senses with their objects. In other words, they are born of identification with the body. Krishna indicates that those who are devoted to enjoyment and power are carried away by the words of the Vedas, which promise heavenly enjoyment by sacrifice and regulated activity. Enjoyment is our birthright, for it is the characteristic of the spirit soul. But the spirit soul tries to enjoy materially, and this is the mistake. Anything to add, Satya, in your reflections?
I'm just thinking, like, this whole thing, this whole chapter is basically trying to establish the point, at least some understanding that we're actually separate from these bodies, that we're actually eternal beings. And like, if you kind of, if you like sit down and think about it, it's not something that you just wake up one day and you're like, yeah, I'm not this body, because you're so engrossed in all the dealings with the body, like every single thing, like you're sleeping, waking up in the morning, you have to eat, you're having interactions with other people. And so so I think to some extent, unless we're going through some kind of hardship with the body, sometimes we may develop like an extreme affection for it, an attachment for it, and we may not actually want to accept the idea that we actually have an eternal identity separate from the body. Because if you're in a comfortable situation, if you've got good health, if everything in your life is just going perfectly well, then that part of you that asks the why question doesn't always, that switch doesn't click. So sometimes when we're affected, when the body is affected with either disease or we start to age, then we start to question, how is it that I will carry on enjoying? How is it that I will carry on with my life? So yeah, I don't think that like coming to the understanding that we're not these bodies is just something that we just wake up one day. I think it's a gradual process, and I think it's also related to the false ego. So I don't it's not just false ego as in that we're identifying ourselves in relation with a particular family, our country of birth, in a certain community, the language that we speak, the cultural practices that we have, and the function that we're playing within our family as either a mother or father, what role we're playing in society as well. So all of these things are interconnected with the identity of the body. And I think once we start, kind of breaking that down, uh, then we'll be able to actually tap into the other side of actually being an eternal person. So I think it's a journey into coming to appreciating that point. Because if we look at a lot of the social prejudices in this world, it is based on the body. And if we have a spiritual vision, we immediately transcend all of that prejudice and we become unified. And that unification is coming through a higher consciousness, a consciousness of understanding the eternal self. So I think it's a gradual process. So I mean, although everything is described in the literature, it is a process of coming to understanding And even if theoretically we may understand, living our lives with that vision is also something that gradually we develop, because we would act in that way in our relationships and our interactions with people, the environment, and everything, with that sort of understanding of this eternal self.
Yeah, I think that reminds me of the verse that we just covered where the Lord says that devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. Like, we just don't consider it unless we're tested and we're put in a situation where we need to consider an alternative, where we need to consider that this may not last forever, or this is not working right now. There has to be something that does work. So that's when. As we have already pointed out, these dualities, such as heat and cold, pleasure and pain, arise due to the contact of the senses with their objects. In other words, they are born of identification with the body. Krishna indicates that those who are devoted to enjoyment and power are carried away by the words of the Vedas, which promise heavenly enjoyment by sacrifice and regulated activity. Enjoyment is our birthright, for it is characteristic of the spirit soul. But the spirit soul tries to enjoy materially, and that is the mistake. Everyone is turning to material subjects for enjoyment, and is compiling as much knowledge as possible. Someone is becoming a chemist, physicist, politician, artist, or whatever. Everyone knows something of everything, or everything of something, and this is generally known as knowledge. But as soon as we leave the body, all of this knowledge is vanquished. In a previous life, one may have been a great man of knowledge, but in this life he has to start again by going to school and learning to read and write from the beginning. Whatever knowledge was acquired in the previous life is forgotten. The situation is that we are actually seeking eternal knowledge, but this cannot be acquired by this material body. We are all seeking enjoyment through these bodies, but bodily enjoyment is not our actual enjoyment, it is artificial. We have to understand that if we want to continue in this artificial enjoyment, we will not be able to attain our position of eternal enjoyment. The body must be considered a diseased condition. A diseased man cannot enjoy himself properly. A man with jaundice, for instance, will taste sugar candy as bitter, but a healthy man can taste its sweetness. In either case, the sugar candy is the same, but according to our condition, it tastes different. Unless we are cured of this diseased conception of bodily life, we cannot taste the sweetness of spiritual life. Indeed, it will taste bitter to us. At the same time, by increasing our enjoyment of material life, we are further complicating our diseased condition. A typhoid patient cannot eat solid food, and if someone gives it to him to enjoy and he eats it, he is further complicating his malady and endangering his life. If we really want freedom from the miseries of material existence, we must minimize our bodily demands and pleasures. Actually, material enjoyment is not enjoyment at all. Real enjoyment does not cease. In the Mahabharata, there is a verse, Ramante Yogino Nante, to the effect that the yogis, yogino, those who are endeavoring to elevate themselves to the spiritual platform, are actually enjoying Ramante, but their enjoyment is Anante, endless. This is because their enjoyment is in relation to the supreme enjoyer, Rama, Sri Krishna. Bhagavan Sri Krishna is the real enjoyer, and the Bhagavad Gita 5.29 confirms this. The sages, knowing me as the ultimate enjoyer of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attain peace from the pangs of material miseries. Bhoga means enjoyment, and our enjoyment comes from understanding our position as the enjoyed. The real enjoyer is the Supreme Lord, and we are enjoyed by him. Any reflections?
Does anybody Does any of the viewers have any reflections? You
Yeah,
can write
sure.
your message in the chat box. I'm just thinking, Krsnarupa, there's this Basha, there's this whole description of enjoyment, and that that these bodies, like, they don't give us full happiness. And I'm just thinking,
Mm,
like, when you think about it, it's like life is meant, you're meant to be happy, right? Like, that's what everybody actually wants. They want to be
mm,
happy. And then, like, if you come across a description like this saying that you have to control your senses, and like, you're not actually enjoying, it's kind of like, it could be like, how do we kind of understand this sort of thing?
mm,
So I think, to some extent, the body has certain basic sort of needs, and things that has to kind of be met. Prabhupada explains this in
yeah.
his lectures. So, you have to eat, you have to sleep, right? And I think it's that when there's an overindulgence, and when it becomes excessive, and if it becomes harmful to yourself, and if it becomes harmful to other people, then we know that, like, this is not actually a healthy situation. So,
Yeah.
the point also, I think, that Prabhupada is trying to uh, bring through here, is that it's not just that we are sort of just becoming like some yogi sitting on a mountain and depriving ourselves, kind of thing. In the Bhakti tradition, it's full of vibrancy, and there is music, there's food, there's all of these things, and we can enjoy in a spiritual way, that we become purified, and then we awaken our eternal consciousness. So it's not to say that we become completely deprived, but the point is that, like, the material senses that we currently have, they have their limitations in
Mm,
their capacity to experience. And if there's excessive, like, overindulgence, then we sort of suffer from that. Like, if you're eating too much of sugar, you can get diabetes. Too much of fatty food and cholesterol. So there's an activity, and then there's a response to that activity, and then we experience the consequence of that activity. So I think it's also just about becoming conscious of what you're enjoying, and then how you're enjoying it.
mm.
So yeah, because
Yeah,
even
it reminds.
yeah. Sorry, you
Go
was
ahead.
no, you were saying.
I was just going to say that it reminds me of something that's, I think, towards the end of Science of Self-Realization, where Srila Prabhupada says, I think Srila Prabhupada is answering a question, what is the purpose of life? And Srila Prabhupada answers it by saying, the purpose of life is to enjoy, but the problem is materialists don't know how to enjoy. They're trying to do it inefficiently or in a way that doesn't work. So,
It's true. It's true. It's kind of like, you're trying to experience something that won't satisfy you. And I think it's like, we go through life, and we have a variety of experiences in different sorts of sensory experiences, you could say. But the real thing is that we have to sit down one day and just, like, make that evaluation of, is this actually bringing me a sense of fulfillment and contentment that is increasing continuously, and will it always last? And I think that
mm,
that's the point with the material body, is that it has its limitations. It can only
mm,
take us, that experience of pleasure through the body can only take us so far. But the eternal self, now, that's worthwhile investment, as you were saying earlier. That's a different kind of happiness, a different kind of fulfillment and satisfaction that we experience. So yeah.
yeah, there's also like an analogy that I've heard Jayadvaita Swami give, and I think most likely Srila Prabhupada originally gave this analogy that um, if you're trying to eat and there is no salt, then you can't eat. And if there's too much salt, you still can't eat. So you can't have like, it's like what you were saying at the beginning, like you have to have a balance because we do have certain needs that have to be met. But if you try to completely eliminate any needs of the body, then it's not really possible to continue. And if you overindulge, then it's still not possible to keep going.
So it's all about that balance.
Okay. An example of this relationship can be found in the material world between the husband and the wife. The husband is the enjoyer, and the wife is the enjoyed. The word Prakriti means woman. Purusha, or spirit, is the subject, and Prakriti, or nature, is the object. The enjoyment, however, is participated in both by the husband and the wife. When actual enjoyment is there is no distinction that the husband is enjoying more or the wife is enjoying less. Although the male is the predominator and the female is the predominated, there is no division when it comes to enjoyment. On a larger scale, no living entity is the enjoyer. God expanded into many, and we constitute those expansions. God is one without a second, but he willed to become many in order to enjoy. We have experienced that there's little or no enjoyment in sitting alone in a room talking to oneself. However, if there are 5 people present, our enjoyment is enhanced, and if we discuss Krishna before many, many people, the enjoyment is all the greater. Enjoyment means variety. God became many for his enjoyment, and thus our position is that of the enjoyed. That is our constitutional position and the purpose for our creation. Both enjoyer and enjoyed have consciousness, but the consciousness of the enjoyed is subordinate to the consciousness of the enjoyer. Although Krishna is the enjoyer and we are the enjoyed, the enjoyment can be participated in equally by everyone. Our enjoyment can be perfected when we participate in the enjoyment of God. There is no possibility of our enjoying separately on the bodily platform. Material enjoyment on the gross bodily platform is discouraged throughout the Bhagavad Gita. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of heat and cold, happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O sign of Bharat, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. The gross material body is the result of the interaction of the modes of material nature, and it is doomed to destruction. Only the material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is subject to destruction. Therefore fight, O descendant of Bharat. Bhagavad Gita 2.18. Sri Krishna therefore encourages us to transcend the bodily conception of existence and attain to our actual spiritual life. When the embodied being is able to transcend these 3 modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. Bhagavad Gita 14.20. To establish ourselves on the Brahmabhuta spiritual platform, above the 3 modes, we must take up the method of Krishna consciousness. The gift of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the chanting of the names of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, facilitates this process. This method is called Bhakti Yoga or Mantra Yoga, and it is employed by the highest transcendentalists. How the transcendentalists realize their identity beyond birth and death, beyond the material body, and transfer themselves from the material universe to the spiritual universes are the subjects of the following chapters. So that's our plug for reading the rest of this book, if you want it.
Do you have any other reflections? Okay.
I was just wondering if any reflections, they can type it out to us. Or anything that struck them, stood out for them.
I was just thinking, there's a sentence on page 14. God expanded into many, and we constitute those expansions. So it's there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita that's basically elaborating that point, that Bhagavad, that we are eternal fragmental parts of the Supreme. So the sentence is not following through with the philosophy that we you know uh, we meditate and then sort of we become one with God and we merge into. No, it's that eternally we are part and parcel of the supreme, of the divine. We have the same sort of nature in a minute. It's minutely expressed. So just on that point, it's we eternally separated living entities. And also that point of enjoyment in association with the Lord is kind of like if you think about your own life, like if you have a circle of friends or whatever the case is, your family, if you have something that you really like, and say it's like a piece of cake or some kind of music or whatever, and if you're on your own, you enjoy it, right? But then when you share it with somebody, and that pleasure that you're experiencing, it becomes increased. So it's sort of the same concept basically with our relationship with the supreme, because it can seem kind of like enjoying with God, and it's kind of like a distant thing, but
Mm.
it's about relationship essentially, that everything is enhanced by relationship, by of course in a pure sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was what I was thinking of when you read that last section. Abby, I had
Yeah.
some request earlier.
Right, to think how like food allows us to enjoy in relationship with him. Like he wants us to reach that platform, that pure platform where we can enjoy with him eternally. And then it's just like mind blowing to think that like we would never have considered something like that for ourselves, but to
Yeah,
think that that's what the Lord wants us to achieve.
I think it's also like Prabhupada was giving the he was where is it? He was breaking down the syllables of Krishna on page 6, and he gave the definition of Krishna as being the greatest pleasure. So it's a nice
Mm.
sort of meditation in the sense that everybody is actually searching after pleasure, and like we're always looking for that perfect person, and we kind of like there's this whole sort of idea of an eternal soulmate, like my soulmate, the perfect fit, she's just perfect, we just completely compatible, he's completely compatible. But the reality of it is that for so long as we're functioning through the body and through identifying what the limitations of this body, we'll always encounter challenges within our relationships, and we'll always want to have that rejecting sort of spirit. Um, but even though that may be there, the fact that we have the desire for a relationship that is completely fulfilling, it's reflective of that eternal nature of the soul. Because dormant within us is that relationship, that longing to be awakened and to be reconnected with Krishna. And Krishna is representative of that. Like, he's got all of these qualities. He has all strength, fame, beauty, power, renunciation, all knowledge. So he has these characteristics where he is, the most attractive person, because no other person that we've ever would ever meet within this world would have all of these characteristics to the fullest and to an infinite degree. So we are searching for that relationship, and that relationship is essentially found with the divine. So it's not to say that it minimizes the value or the importance that we have in relation to others. It just means um, that when we become conscious of who we are in relation with the Supreme, and we start to see other people, their relation also with the Supreme, then our relationships with each other become more pure. It becomes more selfless, because we're not seeing the other person as a means to satisfy or fulfill a vacancy within our own hearts. Like, it becomes more genuine, like genuine friendship, not like using the person as an instrument. So yeah, it's
Yeah, I
nice
think
book.
that mm, it
Yeah.
is.
You were saying, I think.
I was gonna say that I think it's a great point that like we understand that we're seeking after our relationship with the Lord, but that also gives us the perspective of realizing who everyone else that we interact with are, like what their position is. Because without understanding who the Lord is, we can't properly appreciate who other people are and why they're so valuable. We might try to on the material platform, but it'll fall short. But if we have the proper spiritual perspective of like what people's identity really is, then we're more able to appreciate them more consistently.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think it allows us that, that objectivity as well. So, it's a, it's a really good book, and the session went really quickly today, I feel. There's like,
Mm.
it's like a few minutes left actually. But if we can just browse, yeah, Jan, is that how you say it? I'm not sure. He says great point. Um, okay, let's just browse through this over here, the comments and stuff like that. Okay. Okay, Abir earlier was saying we only have a few minutes, so we're just gonna zip through this, right? Please talk about um, death and karma. You wanna just make a quick comment there, Krsnarupa?
I'm not sure if he means, I think later on he said the death of karma. I'm not sure if he means the karma about death or if he means the elimination of karma. Maybe, Abir, if you could clarify that for us. He also wanted to know where can we get this book. So we're doing the Live to Give campaign at the moment. And if you, well, we can reach out to you and share the catalog with you. And if you don't already have like Bhagavad Gita and Science of Self-Realization, maybe you do. But if you don't, then we can reach out to you and tell you how to get those as well.
Yeah.
And we're going to be posting about it. We're going to have like polls later on, some quiz questions. And if you guys answer correctly and tag a friend, then we'll be sharing a book with you.
Yeah. But if Abir, you in particular you want this specific book, then just drop us a message after the session, and we can share the details with you, and the collection and or delivery, all of that. I'm not sure if Abir is still online, but I think maybe he meant in context of the text, like it's speaking about not being the body and stuff, that there's an eternal self, and then the body is separate. So the soul is maintaining its purity always in all circumstances, and then it's acting through the means of the body. So it is the body that is accruing all sorts of results of these activities, and that that becomes attached to the subtle body. And so long as we have desires that don't maintain full purity and is not in complete relation with the divine, then we perpetuate our existence within a temporary dimension. So it means that if we have unfulfilled desires, and by the laws of nature, the opportunity to fulfill that, even if it may be impure and not connected with the supreme, the opportunity is afforded to us. So this is how basically karma is working. And at death, so that is why at death your consciousness is so essential. So the soul is now being, at death, the soul is being transferred to another body to fulfill that particular set of desires that you may have had. We can elaborate it any further, but it's just that there's little few minutes left. I don't know if Abir is still online.
He's still here.
Okay, we can get this book. Tirumala saying, thank you, Satya and Krsnarupa. I really appreciated the point made earlier regarding heart posture. It is so important in understanding that the way in which we and others relate to each other, yeah, as well as how we react to our circumstances. Yeah, I think that's been like a real thing for all of us with this whole corona thing. Um, And we just had some EM join us just now. So I don't know, Krsnarupa, do you have any concluding reflections or anything that you want to share with everybody? We've got a few minutes left.
I think my final reflection would be just to build on what we were speaking about early in the session, that when we encounter higher knowledge or spiritual knowledge, we may not always be in a position to fully absorb it or apply it. But if we just keep in touch or like keep association of higher knowledge, higher guidance, then we will gain the strength from it and we will actually gain solace from it. It'll give us the tools to cope with what we have. And sometimes it'll happen in ways that we don't see. But we'll look back on it and realize how it gave us the strength situations where we otherwise wouldn't have made it out.
Yeah, I think that's a valuable point. I think it came up in the session with Namamrit as well, that that point of actually making progress, and we don't actually always see it. We don't see
Yeah.
how some. Hey Siobhan, you joined us. We're just about to end though. We don't always see how it's actually contributing to us and how it's actually growing and how it's actually making us strong. It's kind of like when a child is learning how to walk. To the child, it's like just they tumbling and they're falling over and all of that. But then the parents are giving them encouragement and support, and eventually they learn how to walk on their own. So it's kind of like that. It's a similar kind of thing. We are gaining strength, but it's such a gradual thing that we don't notice it sometimes. So yeah. So thank you so much, Krsnarupa, for sharing your time with us this Saturday morning. It was lovely having you read with us, and so uh, appreciate the little nectar drops during the last few minutes, Siobhan. Okay, so like we were saying earlier, the books are going to be available. We're going to put up our catalog up, but you can drop us a message anyway. And if you are interested in this particular book that Krsnarupa has selected today for today's reading, you can just drop us a message, and then we'll send you the details. Also, there will be a little quiz after this. After this video is uploaded. You want to just share the details there, Krsnarupa, again?
Sure. So if you just check the Bhakti Yoga Society Durban Our Stories, we're going to have 2 quiz questions. And we have some books that we would like to give out as gifts. So if you answer the questions right, or even just one of them right, and tag a friend in our post of this session, then we will be happy to deliver a book to you guys. Another way to do it is just to comment your reflection on the post and tag a friend. So either way, you can choose whichever one you prefer, and be glad to gift you a book.
Yeah, and the book is it's the Bhagavad Gita and Science of Self-Realization that comes as a gift. So Abir is also he's also saying that the BYS has a YouTube channel, so you're free to subscribe there as well. For the month of December, we're going to be leaving some of our videos uploaded on IGTV, and then from January we'll remove it and we'll shift it to YouTube. So we're leaving it there so that you can view it anytime, and you can share reflections, and the opportunity for you to claim your December gift is there. So with that, we've come to the end of the session. We're going to get cut off in a short while. But thank you so much, Krsnarupa, for being with us. And thank you to everybody that actually joined the session. Siobhan, Tirumala, Mersha was here, and everybody else that joined. Dear Lord Krishna, Pralambari was also here. So it's good to have everybody online. And we will see you. Our next session is tomorrow with Vrindavaneshwari. We hear about her journey in Bhakti. That's at 7 o'clock tomorrow. And then Bhakti Journey carries on next week, same time. So, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.